Hola, buenos días. Perfecto.
Aló, hola, hola,
Hola,
Buenos días, ¿cómo están?
Hola, hola,
2 minutos.
hola,
hola.
hola.
¿Se escucha bien, cierto? ¿Todo bien?
Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, to everybody in attendance. This is Carlos Chaparro in the name of PrivateHouseCoopers. We would like to welcome you today to our seminar on digital nomads in Colombia. Um, I think for the benefit of the webinar, a few remarks. In the first place, we're going to be talking about uh, what it means to be a digital nomad in Colombia. We're fortunate enough to have Ricardo Rojas, an attorney for Colombia, which is the Colombian Investment Agency. Thank you, Ricardo, for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And then we'll have Germán Benítez, our immigration lead lawyer, and Andrea Balbuena, our individual tax director. This seminar will be running for over an hour, and as you can see on the screen, the seminar will run in a very interactive and lively way. We're going to be talking about what it means to be a digital nomad in Colombia, then talk a little bit about immigration, and then tax. Last but not least, tax always important. Um, for those of you in attendance, thank you again for making time. We are expecting over 100 people to join us this morning. We're very grateful in so many locations. And then, as you can see on the screen, we will talk about a few things, and the plan is to have a Q&A section at the very end of the webinar. Again, for those of you who keep joining, we're going to be running for over an hour. And then, without any further ado, Ricardo, I'll turn it over to you. Just to say before you take the lead, Ricardo, we all know how important relocating to other jurisdictions is important in today's world, not only for work, for tourism, for fun, etc. And Colombia is no exception. We've seen a lot of interest in Colombia over the past perhaps 2 3 years. You'll let us know in a minute more about that. But today's seminar, it's pretty well intended to present and share with anybody in attendance what it means to come to Colombia, what you should be caring about, what you should be thinking about. And then Ricardo, again, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So today I'm coming from Colombia to give a view from destination and from what we can offer for digital nomads. So first of all, I'm gonna talk about the concept and trends related to digital nomads, and then about Colombia as a destination for this kind of travelers. So first of all, a digital nomad is someone who can work from everywhere and without having a fixed residence. The key points are that they use technology and communication tools to work. They are free to move, and they have a lifestyle with control of time and decisions, like much more flexible.
Can I just interrupt you for a sec, Ricardo? Have you seen in the past couple of years the same interest we have seen? More and more people attempting to relocate to Colombia just to work, to come here and work remotely. Is that something you've seen in your experience?
Yeah, we have seen, digital nomads have been around for a long time. And with the pandemic, the remote work increased a lot, and that brought the possibility for many digital nomads to, I rather say, for many people to start thinking in the lifestyle of a digital nomad as a possibility in their lives. So uh, there's three main groups that are like the autonomous workers, the uh, entrepreneurs, and the remote workers.
Yeah.
Those are the three main categories, and those are um, also reflected in the new regulations that are going to be explained later on by the team of PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I'm going to talk about the preferences of the digital nomads. They like to work from hotels or hostels, also from local cafes, the Airbnb where they are located, their primary mean of transport. This is like a special category of digital nomads that's like the van life, that are those travelers who travel a country by using a van or a camper and working in their way. And they also use libraries and co-working spaces. Um, we have seen that they earn similar amounts of monies as when they work in an office, and also some of them even increase their income. Uh, the main origin of these travelers are North America and Europe, and they're highly educated with a 72% who have a bachelor's degree and 33% who have a master's degree.
Can I just interrupt you again, and not to put you on the spot, Ricardo, but on average, what's the length of a stay digital nomads use to come to Colombia on average, from your
Mhm.
experience?
I mean, the digital nomads in general don't really have very long stayings.
They are nomads, right?
Yeah, but many times it depends on the facilities that a country gives in terms of migration. Uh, in general, like like tourism visas are about 3 months, and here in Colombia we have 3 months that could be extended 3 months more, and that's like the main thing, because migration processes can be confusing for some people, and they prefer like not having to face these kind of procedures and just stay as long as they can without those things.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, they spend an average of 1,600 US dollar in the market. Not all of those are for like tourism related services, but many of them are like for accommodation and uh, some activities that connect with the culture and the place where they are. And they use a lot something that's called geo-arbitrage, that is using uh, the difference of the value of the different currencies in their favor. So that's one of the reasons why Colombia is getting very attractive, and is because we have here a less expensive cost of life, and the euros, the dollars, the pounds that are the main currencies in the countries from which the nomads are from are very good valued here. Well, a nomad traveler is usually looking for internet, affordable accommodation, new experiences, and also in a personal level, they like to feel they're free. They like to learn languages. They like flexibility and yeah, interaction with the communities. And in their free time, they like nature and adventure, culture, well-being and relaxation, sun and luxury.
I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead of the discussion, Ricardo, but is there any city in your experience that is a preferred destination for digital nomads?
Yeah,
In Colombia, I mean?
yeah. Later on, we're gonna
Okay.
go into it, but especially Medellin has been ranked in
Right.
some publications as a good destination for digital nomads. But there's other cities that are also like in the list of these kind of travelers. Okay, so um, the cost of living in Colombia it's very competitive for like attracting this kind of travelers. Uh, According to Numbeo, is the sixth country with the best, with a friendly cost of living, or for saying some way, and it's the fourth best destination for retirement. Uh, Colombia has good internet access and speed, especially in the main cities, being an average download speed for for the fourth quarter of 2021, 19.9 Mbps in the four main cities, and in the other cities the average is 87.9. We have a very friendly migratory policy for these kind of travelers, and although we don't have a clear measurement of the amount of nomads that are coming to our country, we can have an idea with the reservations who are longer than 14 nights. And we found that more than 600,000 reservations were registered in the country.
And Ricardo, if I may, for those of you in attendance, we have now over 60 people joining us. Thank you for making time and joining us this morning in about 15 locations, different locations. We appreciate your interest. We're going to be talking about immigration matters for digital nomads as we continue with the presentation. So please stay tuned. As a reminder, we're talking about what it means to be a digital nomad in Colombia, what the Colombia has to offer. Uh, Ricardo is presenting in the name of Colombia, the Colombian Investment Agency. And then we will continue with immigration matters. Germán Benítez, our immigration lead lawyer. Last but not least, Andrea Valbuena, individual tax considerations. Every time you relocate to a country, you need to care about taxes. So for those of you still joining, this is the agenda we're going to be we're actually having for today. So please continue, Ricardo.
Yeah, next. So Colombia, we have to offer many things for digital nomads. Like according to what we have seen and what surveys have shown that are the main interests. We have alternatives for connecting with culture, with nature, and with communities here. We have 6 different regions to promote. There are the Greater Caribbean, the Greater Colombian Caribbean, the Colombian Pacific, the Western Colombian Andes, the Eastern Colombian Andes, the Colombian Massif, and the Colombian Amazon Orinoco. The ones that can be more in the eye of the digital nomads are the Great Caribbean, the Great Caribbean with cities like Cartagena, Barranquilla, the 2 Andean regions, one of them with Medellin, the other one with Bogota, as well as they have the Coffee Eggs and the Bucaramanga and other cities, and we have the Pacific with Cali. So Cartagena, Medellin, and Bogota are the destinations that show the greatest potential since international promotion. And Medellin is the position 77 out of 80 best cities for digital nomads according to best remote work cities. And alongside with Buenos Aires and Playa del Carmen, Medellin is considered an outstanding destination for its cost of life and for the amount of places like cafes and the widespread Wi-Fi connection. Also, we have seen that with the new visa and with the trends of the digital nomads, entrepreneurship is a very interesting thing, both for tourism and for investment in digital enterprises and startups. So I'm going to share some information about the ecosystem for entrepreneurship in Colombia. So,
Sorry.
okay. So Colombia is ranked as the best conditions for entrepreneurship according to Entrepreneurship Monitor. Also is the fifth country in the region in number of startups and has also generated unicorns, and is the fourth entrepreneur investment attractiveness in the region according to Private Equity Country Attractiveness Index 2021. We have a network of supporting entities that promote entrepreneurship, both public and private, and also for the generality of digital nomads, we have an offer of hotels who have like long-staying packages and telecommunicating services. You can find it in the presentation, like some of them who have worked with ours, and we can recommend.
Let me just pause here, Ricardo, for the benefit of any additional people joining us this morning. These materials will be shared with anybody having registered to our session. So I think it's going to be very useful for any of you thinking about relocating to Colombia or already staying in Colombia, that you know about so many details about different destinations, why Colombia is so relevant, and why this potential trend of digital nomads coming to Colombia is growing and growing and growing. So thank you, Ricardo.
So, and we also have co-working spaces that can be used by this kind of problem. Our message from ProColombia here is that we have seen, as many other countries, that digital nomads are a win-win opportunity. We are happy to have you sharing your information, exchanging technology, living experiences with the communities of our country. Um, and we hope to, as we are very well known, welcome you because we are the most welcoming country in the world, and we want you to join us and live this experience of working from Colombia.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I think what you have presented is a testimony of, again, the importance of Colombia as a destination for digital nomads. As I was saying at the beginning of the presentation today, we see the interest growing and growing, and we see considerable the number of people relocating to Colombia is growing and growing for many reasons. For many reasons, historically, we at PwC have seen foreign individuals coming to Colombia to live or to work in the context of companies, multinational companies sponsoring relocations to Colombia. But that is not the only one fact pattern now for people to relocate to Colombia. We see in the after of the pandemic, we see now more and more that people want to relocate and enjoy the beautiful things Colombia has to offer. I agree with you. The currency volatility, particularly our depreciation, our currency, makes Colombia cheaper for many, and that's a good reason also to come to Colombia and enjoy what we have to offer. So, Ricardo, thank you for presenting. For those of you in attendance, we now have over 80 participants registered. Thank you for your interest. We're moving along with the agenda now to talk about immigration law. Ricardo made an interesting remark about, at some point in time, digital nomads or people moving to Colombia may need to care about, what the immigration status they have in Colombia is going to be. So Germán Benítez is our immigration lead lawyer. He has a lot of experience in helping non-Colombian nationals move to Colombia and get the right visas, get the appropriate permits to be here. Herman, I guess welcome. And I guess the first question I think everybody perhaps is interested in is, if I'm moving to Colombia temporarily, right? What's what's my first take in terms of immigration? What do I need to care about? Do I need to care about something or anything, or should I just relax, have fun, enjoy the weather, the beautiful things in Colombia? That's it. Thank you, Juan, for joining today.
And thank you, Carlos Miguel, and thank you for all my colleagues here. And a couple of remarks in order to answer your question. Is basically Colombia is a very hospitable place to live with, and actually is a place and which the conditions set by the law in order to get a visa are, in my experience, easier than in other places. In my almost 16 years of experience working on immigration matters, I've seen quite a lot of countries with several details in order to get visas. Colombia, on contrary, is an easy place to get a visa. So my first advice for anybody who is trying to get to our country is plan your trip. It's an easy place to get, but plan your trip in order to define whether if a visa is needed or if you can join us without any special permit. That being said, as Ricardo told us a couple of minutes ago, we have pretty recently the resolution 5477, which actually was issued by the former government in order to make easier the way to allow people coming. Okay. On that resolution, the brand new type of visa is the digital nomad visa, which actually has been planned to entrepreneurs and people just to keep on Colombia as a stay place for a quite short time. And this is a good opportunity to explain a key difference here about how you're going to plan your trip to Colombia. If your plan is to stay in Colombia for less than 6 months, maybe, and if you are not from a restricted nationality, you can come by and do your digital nomad activity without a visa. If you are from a restricted nationality, and we will see this later on, or if you go up to the 6 months, you need a digital nomad visa. Okay, so as you can see on the presentation, the law says that digital nomads are individuals who work remotely while usually moving between different locations instead of being in a fixed. So this broad definition gives us the scenario of how people should address this type of visa. They perform activities through different kind of technology. So this is critical, the internet access that you mentioned before. And obviously, all the data frame is quite needed in order to be as a digital nomad. One of the things that please do care is you cannot work for a Colombian company under a digital nomad visa. This is critical because if you are under this scenario, you need another type of visa that, although it's easy to get, right, requires certain paperwork and other matters that we will see afterwards. Okay?
Can I just ask you a question,
Yes,
Herman?
please.
You were saying before, if you planning ahead is important.
Yes.
I think we couldn't be more in agreement with that. Um, and you were also saying, if you're planning to stay in Colombia for less than 6 months, you might even be able to come on no visa at all,
Yes.
right? And stay and spend your time here.
Providing
Yeah.
you stay in Colombia as a digital nomad under the definitions.
Yeah. So I'm moving to Colombia.
Yes.
I'm going to relocate for 5 months. I'm going to be working in Colombia for my employer in the US, in Europe, elsewhere.
Yes.
I can do that. I can do it. I don't
You
need
can.
I don't need the digital nomad visa,
Yes, you don't need.
but you never know how things will work out in the end. So I anticipate I'm gonna stay over 6 months in Colombia.
Mhm.
Can I get the digital nomad visa while in Colombia, or do I need to leave Colombia to get
No,
the visa, somewhere at Colombian embassy or something like that?
you can perfectly remain in Colombia and ask for
Okay.
the digital visa. Actually, the process is quite easy. Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is quite well fond in receiving this kind of requests. So they are happy to help anytime anybody would like to switch from a tourist stay in Colombia to a more permanent one under a visa status. Okay,
Okay.
so it's quite easy. And obviously, if for any reason your digital nomad think has changed in the present, you might pretty well change to another type of visa, let's say work, services agreement, business, investment. There are almost 43 types of visa according to the current law. And actually that resolution, what you see in the screen, has, well, that resolution changed several of the types of visa that we are currently working on. So this is a brand new resolution. It has so many changes to the current visas, but we are pretty confident that this type of resolution, what the purpose of that was to help the people in order to speed up the process and try to make it easier and less confusing the process now on. Okay, so let's please move on. These are the non-restricted nationalities. As Ricardo said, we have almost 100 nationalities without any kind of restriction. So Colombia, again, is a very hospitable, and we are pretty happy to receive foreigners, although the conditions in Colombia might not be apparently so good. We do have all the legal grounds and all the mindset to receiving people from different countries. As you can see in the screen, there are so many places and nationalities, almost so many of them not so known to people here, but we still do have that. If, exactly. So uh, in regards to documents needed to apply for this kind of visa, you need just a valid pass for these 6 months, a motivational letter explaining the activity you perform in Colombia, an issue by the company who employs you as a digital nomad. So with that document saying what is the purpose of assigning you or make your trip available in Colombia, you will. If you are an entrepreneur, which is the another alternative here, what you need is a letter, again, a letter, explaining what will be the business, the project, or what is the scenario for that project to be achievable, and the financial and human resources that you think are gonna need to get this entrepreneurship in Colombia.
So Herman, eh, I'm listening in, and I understand from you. You don't need to have a sponsor in Colombia for your
You
digital
don't.
nomad visa,
No,
certainly.
you don't need that.
And then I can see a requirement around bank statements. I was wondering in my mind, if I am a digital nomad,
Mhm.
I have a digital nomad visa. Is that enough to open a bank account in Colombia? To your knowledge?
Well, a digital nomad,
I'm not
once
sure. I'm not sure if we need a bank account anyway, because
you don't
everything
need
is
it.
digital now.
You don't need a bank account in Colombia, but let's think about what happens if, as a digital nomad, you would like to open a bank.
Right.
Okay, if you would like so, what you need is a foreigner national ID, which is actually is a card given by the migratory office, And actually, you can only apply to a foreign ID when you have a visa with a validity term greater than 3 months. If you fulfill those requirements, you are able to get your foreign ID, and with foreign ID, you will be able to go to any commercial bank and ask for an open bank account. But for the sake of clarity, to be a digital nomad, you don't need to have a local bank account. You pretty well get your bank account on your home country or whatever place you come by, right? And get the funds to Colombia in any ATM, cash, or whatever way that you see fit to get your funds in Colombia. Okay. And last but not least, you need a health insurance policy, which is basically any sort of health coverage. If you don't have, you should ask for one, because in Colombia, although we have a health system, which is, in my opinion, one of the best in the world, the coverage of that kind of system is restricted to locals and foreigners registered in Colombia as people contributing to the system. Hence, a person just as a tourist one cannot be covered by our national system, so it requires a health insurance policy.
Let me just go back a little bit, Herman. If I am a digital nomad and I move to Colombia, relocate to work, and I get this visa, right? And then I was just saying, you never know how things will work out. I may want to stay in Colombia and get employed in Colombia. So I'm gonna quit my foreign employment and I'm just gonna move to a local employer. Um, can I get the work visa while in Colombia? A transition from digital nomad visa to work visa?
Yes, yes. Let's say your entrepreneurship
Mhm.
didn't go as you planned. Okay, so if you see fit to get employed in Colombia, to get a job, okay, you might pretty well switch to a work visa, which is an M-type visa. It has some tricky issues to be dealt with, but it's rather easy to get in comparison to another countries. Let's say in the United States, it's almost 6 months queue to get that kind of visa. In
Right.
Colombia, is no more than 10 working days. So it's quite a lot easier than in other countries. Okay, and as you see, the process, we just basically summarize what the process is. But I just would like to remark how easy, in terms of days, how fast track this process is. Because by law, the officer in charge of studying your application has 30 calendar days, right?
Yeah.
To say what's going on with your application. So in a month, you will be able to see whether if you are accepted at the country or not. And let me tell you, in average, so many foreigners have been accepted so far in Colombia. Colombia, again, receives so many foreigners. We don't have a ratio of bad denials, rejections. We don't use them. Almost every single visa is accepted in Colombia, unless obviously the conditions are not met, in which case the officer has to reject the visa. Okay, let's move on, please. A final marks to my intervention here. This digital nomad visa may be granted for up to 2 years. While you have the visa, you are able to continue and perform the activity approved by the ministry. So you can be quite relaxed for at least 2 years. Obviously, it's discretionary powers of the officer to grant you the visa for a leisure time, but the average is 2 years. 2 years is the top of the time that could be given to get your visa done. This type of visa allows applying on behalf of the digital nomad's beneficiaries. So as a digital nomad, you can come by with your beneficiaries and get your family with you. So which is actually, and let me tell you that this is pretty cool because in other places you should travel alone, but in this case you can come with your whole family. Obviously, you're related, your dear ones, but related ones. Okay, it does not allow to work. This is of a paramount for Colombia. Yeah, for a Colombian employee. Thank you. And this is quite important because if you get employed, you immediately lose your visa and you have to switch to another one, to a suitable one. If for any reason that person finds a job, it's required that before it can commence any labor activities, it gets the visa. Otherwise, penalties either for the foreigner and the company might be applied and are severe. And let me tell you, those are severe penalties to be imposed by. And last is once the visa expires, it is required to initiate a new application. And let me remark this, in Colombia, we don't have a renewal process. In so many countries, there are the renewal process, which means documents are quite few, a background check is not required. In Colombia, we don't have that process. Every single process, either the first time or a renewal one, has exactly the same time frame, requirements, documents, and any step needed to be taken by that. Consequently, in terms of how to get a visa, it's exactly the same to get the first one or any renewal. That's why if you have a digital nomad visa and the 2 times term expires, if you would like to continue as a digital nomad, you have to request another one. Otherwise, switch to another or basically get another kind of residency in Colombia apart from the digital nomad.
Sounds pretty easy.
It is. Actually, it is.
Okay.
It is.
All right. Germán, moving along with the immigration side of the relocation to Colombia, we get questions every now and then. Social security. I'm not employed by a Colombian employer. That's the country.
Mhm.
Right? And remain being employed by the US, and I relocate to Colombia. Why do you have anything from a social security perspective in Colombia?
It's not mandatory. It's not mandatory to be enrolled before the pension system, social security as a health, or even the professional risks. You might pretty well get enrolled as a voluntary one, but as a mandatory basis, you don't need to be enrolled by. So it's again a good position to be with as a digital nomad. Okay?
Thank you, Germán. Ricardo, whenever you want. We are now 30 minutes into the session, and we got over 85 people in attendance. Thank you again to those joining us this morning. Thank you for making time. So far, for the benefit of all of our attendees, so far we have discussed what benefits, what Colombia has to offer for digital nomads to relocate to Colombia. Ricardo Rojas, to my right from the Colombian Investment Agency, ProColombia, made a very informative presentation earlier today. Next, we moved on to talk about immigration matters. Our lead immigration lawyer Germán Benítez, just talked about that. And it's now the time for taxes. Even digital nomads need to worry about taxes or need to consider taxes when coming to Colombia. And we are fortunate enough to have Andrea Balbuena, an individual tax director at PwC. Thank you, Andrea, for joining us this morning. Don't worry, anybody in attendance. We're not gonna go very technical. I think Andrea will, as usual, make a very informative presentation about tax. But I'd like to kick it off, Andrea, your piece with a question. We get feedback from people in the market that your tax situation may not be of concern if you are not a tax resident, but if you are a tax resident, then you should be like concerned about what your tax obligations in Colombia are. I think that's something you will cover, but I'd appreciate, Andrea, if you can comment on that as well as you move along in the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Carlos Miguel. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. To respond Carlos Miguel question, we will see that in a few minutes, but basically there is a misconception that once you are a fiscal resident, you will have a filing requirement, and that is not necessarily the case, at least in Colombia. We will see that in a few minutes. To connect with Herman intervention, please take into account that unlike other countries, the digital nomad visa in Colombia doesn't come with any tax incentive. You may have seen countries such as Portugal, Croatia, or even Costa Rica, where once you have the digital nomad visa, you have some tax incentives or lower tax rates. That is not the case in Colombia. That means that in order to evaluate the fiscal implications for a digital nomad, we need to review the general rules that are applicable for the taxation of individuals. What we usually do when we are analyzing the taxation of any individual is doing an analysis step by step. We, at the beginning, we determine if the individual is fiscal resident. Then we check what are the consequences for that individual. And also we check if there is any compliance obligation in the country. Next slide, please. Okay, so regarding tax residency, we have someone here which is known as the physical presence test. What is relevant in Colombia to check if you are a fiscal resident is the number of days that you spend in the country. It is basically also known as the 183-day rule. If you pass more than 183 days in any 365-day period, you will be considered fiscal resident. It is straightforward. Either you pass those days or not. However, there are some.
Can I just stop you there?
Of course.
The day count, you do it over a calendar year or over any 365 period?
Good question. It is in a rolling period, any 365-day period. Also, you need to take into account that the present can be continuous or non-continuous. If, for example, a digital nomad arrives in February, then leave in April, but come back again from July to October, the conclusion is that the digital nomad is a fiscal resident, even though the presence is non-continuous. Other aspect to take into account is that any date of presence counts as part of the counting. So days of arrival to Colombia or departure from Colombia are part of the counting. For any reason, if you come for tourists, for business trips, whatever, is taken into account as part of the 183-day rule. If there is Colombian people in the audience, please take into account that for Colombian nationals only, our tax code has additional criteria in order to determine if you are a fiscal resident. So even though you don't pass any day in the country during the year, you may still be considered a fiscal resident. For example, if you live with your family here, children, spouse, or more than the 50% of your assets are located in Colombia, you need to check the Article 10 of the tax code because maybe you are still considered a fiscal resident. But again, that rule is only for Colombian nationals. Next one. Okay, so let's jump into the consequences. So once you know if you are a fiscal resident or not, there are some implications you need to be aware of. The first one is that you will be taxed in Colombia on your worldwide income. Worldwide income means Colombian source income and foreign source income for any type. It can be rental income, alimony income, labor income. You mentioned that, for example, Colombia is a good place for retirement. So if you have a pension income and you are a fiscal resident, that income is going to be taxed in Colombia unless there is a double tax treaty in place. And that is another situation that we need to check further. The tax rate that is applicable to fiscal resident is a progressive one. Right now it's from 0 to 39%. To reach the highest tax rate, you need to have about approximately $2,100 to reach the highest tax rate.
Per month.
No, annually. Like
Okay.
Yeah, 200,000. Yeah, and you are compelled to disclose your assets located abroad to the Colombian government. And if you have a filing requirement, we will see that in a minute. The form that you need to file is the 210. By contrast, non-fiscal residents are only taxed in Colombia on the Colombian source income at a flat tax rate of 35%. They are only compelled to report the assets that are located in Colombia. And the form, if they have a filing requirement, is the form 110. Another point that I would like to mention is that if you are a fiscal resident and if you are taxed on worldwide income, if you have foreign source income, you have the possibility to apply a tax credit in Colombia in case you pay taxes abroad on the foreign source income. That is very important to mention because that is one of the key questions and usual questions people ask us. Next one, please.
Andrea, just go back a little bit to recap for the people. Uh, if you're planning to stay in Colombia, do the math. To the extent you exceed 183 days over a 360-day period, you are a tax resident. Digital nomads, Ricardo mentioned, on average, well, they're nomads, they're moving, right? It may not be that many stay over more than 183 days. But you made a good point, which is even if you're not a resident, a tax resident, you may be exposed to tax. Is that something you're gonna comment on later on?
Yes, actually, is the next slide.
Oh, the next slide. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
thank you, Carlos Miguel.
Yeah.
And yes, basically, to complement your point, most of the digital nomads we know are non-fiscal residents of Colombia because they don't pass more than 6 months in the country. However, there are some exceptions. We have seen cases of people who like Medellin very much and stay longer. So one key point for you to take into account is that I have mentioned before that if you are a non-fiscal resident, you are only taxed on local source income, Colombian source income. And then the question is, what is a Colombian source income? An easy example to understand is basically the rental income. For example, if I have a property in Colombia, the rental income from that property is considered Colombian source because I have an immovable property in Colombia. In the case of employment income, our tax law says that any employment or service income received for the rendering of services within the Colombian territory is considered local source income. And that is regardless the location of your employer, the location of the payroll, the currency in which you receive the payment, and any other factor. What is relevant is the fact that you are within the Colombian territory rendering services. So if you are basically a digital nomad, you open your laptop in a co-working space and start to work, responding emails, doing your usual work, then you are doing a service or performing an employment as from Colombia.
So any income I make on the foreign payroll while working in Colombia is sourced to Colombia.
Correct.
Any thresholds that
Yes.
okay.
I will mention that, but please,
Okay.
I would like to mention another point, and is very important to mention. Another question we receive is, well, you are saying to me that this is Colombian source income, but what is the amount of the Colombian source income? How can I calculate the Colombian source income? There is no specific rule for that, but we have taken an approach, and it is an approach that we have seen very much, and it's basically you need two information, and is the number of days that you spend in the country and the monthly employment income you have. So, for example, if my monthly income, employment income is $10,000, and I pass half of the month in Colombia working remotely, I can conclude that $5,000 is the Colombian source income. Of course, this is an approach we have taken. Every case is different. There are some exceptions, but that is a recommendation. So right now, to respond Carlos Miguel question, once you have determined that you are a non-fiscal resident, that you have a Colombian source income, then you need to check if you have a filing requirement. That means that you need to file a tax return before the Colombian government. And to check that, there are 5 thresholds stated in our tax law. The most important one is the last one in the slide. Basically, if the income you have in the year exceed $11,000, you have a filing requirement in Colombia, okay? So once you make this pro rata calculation I mentioned, you know the number of days of present in Colombia, your monthly income, and you do the calculation, and your conclusion is that your local source income is higher than $1,000, you have a filing requirement in Colombia.
And let me just stop here, Andrea. This is so important because for digital nomads, they are not on a Colombian payroll. Germán made it very clear. They work for a foreign employer, that they work remotely from Colombia. If what they make on the foreign payroll is above $11,000, then they'll need to register
Yes,
and pay the tax, even if they are non-tax residents.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So
All right.
basically, yes.
So we have a number of questions actually.
Yeah.
From Uruguay, from Bogota, from Sweden, from Germany, and from Canada. I guess the first one is for Ricardo, actually from our colleague, a colleague of ours in Montevideo. Can we have more details or recap regarding the monthly cost of living in Colombia? You mentioned a little bit of that, Ricardo, at the beginning. If you could just give us some details to your knowledge.
Yeah, in general, like the key factor here is the exchange rate. The exchange rate nowadays is very competitive in terms of amount of Colombian pesos in comparison with many other currencies. These kind of rankings also usually take the reference of the dollar. We also have many small and medium cities that have lower costs of living, and we also have like Bogota, that's a big city with a relatively higher cost of living. Other than that, many of the everyday products that we have are exempt from the sales tax for the access of everybody in a accessible price, let's say like that. And all of these factors combine to have a very attractive cost of living here in Colombia.
Thank you, Ricardo. Another one for Germán. Actually, 2 questions, one from Bogota and then another one from Sweden. This visa, I presumably the digital nomad visa, has this visa or does it need to be requested personally, or is it possible to do it through an agency in Colombia? And then the other question from Sweden is, if, can we get renew another 2-year visa after the first 2 year expires, the first 2 year term for the visa?
Okay, I'm going to start with the second one.
Okay.
Yes, the renewal will be granted for another 2 years time, and yes, you can request the renewal for exactly the same period as the
Over.
first one. Yes, well, there are certain limitations depending of your type of visa, but by sure, the first renewal will be by 2 years if you apply for that kind of term. And regarding the first question, you don't need to go personally to any consulate, Colombian consulate abroad. You have either two options. The first one is to get an agent who will be able to process your visa acting on your behalf, right? The second one is to go personally to the nearest Colombian consulate at the city you live in. Uh, Obviously, request the visa in a personal way. Might have some close approach to the functionary, but don't be afraid to the agents because the process is exactly the same. It should be processed via online. All the documents must be uploaded at the ministry webpage, either if you request it via online or go to the ministry, to the consulate. And finally, just to go to the consulate, the functionary most likely will tell you, go to by your computer and process it, and then you can come by just to ask how your process is going on, not for starting your process.
Okay. Okay.
I would like to compliment that.
Sure.
Yes, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made lots of efforts to have a fully online process. So it can adapt to the dynamics of the digital nomads, and also they establish some communication channels that are very effective that you can use in case of some doubts. You also have to be careful because once you file your application by the system, they can request for more information. They can send some notifications, so you by your own means can check the status of the visa, and you should do it like constantly in case that they may ask some extra information because the functionaries have the whole competence to ask for more information to like guarantee that the whole application like makes sense and matches with the process that you are applying to and the visa that you are applying to.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Germán. A few questions for Andrea on the tax side. To be clear, you only have a filing requirement if you exceed 183 days, or if you are here for 1 month, say, and work while you are here, do you have to pay tax on your income?
Thank you for that question. And basically, you need to file a tax return if you exceed one of the 5 thresholds we show in the slides. So if you pass 1 month and in that month you exceed the amount that I mentioned, which is $11,000, you have a filing requirement in Colombia.
Even if you're not a tax resident.
Correct.
Right. The second question for you is, are there any plans to establish tax and social security agreements with the EU, with Europe? I do remember, Andrea, we have totalization agreements with Chile, Germán, Chile.
Well, in regards to social security, we only have a social security treaty with Spain.
Spain.
Currently, there are a couple of more in negotiation process, but actually there is no enforced any rather than Spain. In South America, it's quite the opposite. We have almost we have several social security treaties with our countries in this region, And for any people coming by, it would be easier if it sets its location in other place
Okay.
and in Colombia as well.
Okay, another question for Andrea. If you are only providing services outside Colombia, you still have to set some of your income as Colombian source? I guess the answer is no, right?
No, because as we mentioned, the key point to consider the source income as being in Colombia is the fact that you are rendering the service within the Colombian territory. So if you have a service that is rendering outside of Colombia, that is considered a foreign source income.
All right, so we are now 2 minutes before the hour. Thank you very much, Andrea, Germán, and Ricardo, for joining us and presenting today around digital nomads in Colombia. Thank you to about 85 people who joined us this morning. Thank you for making time. Appreciate your interest. On the screen, you see a few points that you should have in mind as you consider relocating to Colombia, and also how PwC can help. We will here on the screen. You'll see our contact details. If you need to reach out, whether that is Bogota, Medellin, Cali, we are out there. We have offices everywhere in Colombia, and certainly ProColombia, the investment agency, more than welcome to reach out to Ricardo and understand a lot more of what it means to relocate into Colombia. Thank you again to our colleagues backstage here that help us set this up for today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.